What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this video is going to be a bit different from my normal stuff. So in the last format, Cyber Format, I actually did a video where I sort of like built elemental heroes from the ground up, going through the process of how to build a deck like that, and people seem to enjoy it, so I figured I'd try my hand at doing that sort of thing in Reaper format as well, and maybe I'll do it like once every format for a deck that I think is a bit interesting to construct. Now, I already did my hero video in Reaper format, so that's not the deck that I'm really going to be building in this format here. What I'm going to be building instead is Dark World. Now, Dark World is a very popular archetype at this time, but it is a bit power crept by a lot of the other stuff running around. You know, a lot of the monarchs, just outclass the aggressive pressure that the Dark Worlds can provide. And the ways to actually pitch the Dark Worlds and their effects on being pitched are not really the best in the world. But I figured since there are a couple different ways to build the deck, you can go for more of an aggressive build or you can go for more of a controlling build. I figured I'd go through my process here in building the deck because it is an interesting deck. It just is a bit like underpowered in this format, but that means that there are a bit more constraints on deck building and a bit more interesting directions to go with it. So instead of starting with all the Dark World cards on screen here, I figured I'd just show how to use Dueling Book to search up those Dark World cards. So the first thing you do is, if you're doing it for Reaper format, for instance, you go down to this limited list thing here, and you select the limited list for Reaper format, October 2005 in the TCG, and then you can sort of supply whatever limited list you're doing for whatever format you're in. So what you also want to do is sort by release date, so that way, you won't have to sort of sort through a ton of different things. Like that way, Cocky, Gren, all this stuff isn't going to pop up before the monsters that are actually legal, and so you don't have to actually sort through things. So we just typed in Dark World here just to get a peek at all the different Dark World monsters and cards here, just to get sort of a basic idea. So firstly, we got some monsters, so let's put them up on screen here. And we've also got two spells, the Dark World Lightning and the Gateway to Dark World. Now, whenever you're researching an archetype, you should look into all the cards in advance because some of them won't be classified under this Dark World name. There actually are a couple Dark World cards like that here. So if we look at Dark Deal, that's a trap that goes with the archetype. Also, Forces of Darkness is a good one as well. So these are two good Dark World cards to know about. And, you can also, if you want to, there's a description button, so you can type in Dark World here, and that can sort of get things in the description that should cover some of the things that, might be missed just by typing in Dark World as the name. But, that does miss things like Dark Deal, which is very, very good for the deck, and is clearly intended to be a part of it, because you do see Xur in the card artwork, and also it has, in fact, synergized with Dark World very well, but it doesn't quite show up in this search. So always just be careful when you're searching for this sort of thing to make sure that you catch everything. And oftentimes going through the sets that have been newly released that have those sorts of archetypes in them can be helpful for doing that. But now that we've searched out all the Dark Worlds here, we can get an idea of what to actually do with the deck. Now, if you don't know, a lot of these Dark Worlds have the effect where if they're discarded from the hand of the graveyard by an effect, then they actually come back or they do some other thing. So for instance, Brow, when it's pitched from hand to graveyard, if it's pitched by your own card effect, then you draw one card. By an opponent's, you draw two. And the other ones that have effects like that, like Beige, Gold, and Silva, all just special summon themselves. Gold and Silva are the two bosses of the archetype. They've each got 2300 attack. And they also have an effect that if they're sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, discard to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, then they get to do something pretty broken. So Silva forces your opponent to put two cards from their hand to the bottom of the deck, and Gold forces them to have two cards destroyed, basically, right? So, you might want to go for one of the other. Here, I think we're going to treat them relatively equally. Although if we do find ourselves in a position where we do not want to play 6 of these, then we can sort of get more selective with them. But Brawn is another card here, and when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can discard one card. So this will trigger the Dark Worlds, so you can send things like Gold or Silva and to bring them back and just get more aggressive pressure going. And Scar, which is the last effect monster for the archetype, when it's destroyed by battle, you get to search a level 4 lower Dark World monster from your deck to your hand. So this can get you Beige, it can get you Brow, it can get you Brawn, and that's pretty much it. There is a normal monster, Xur, Knight of Dark World, but realistically this isn't really going to appear in our deck because we don't really need just Dark World names for the sake of it. Well, I mean, there is potentially a way that we could do that because there is Gateway to Dark World, which is a quick play spell. So start one Dark World monster in your graveyard. Still summon that target. You cannot summon monsters the turn you activate this effect except by this effect. So you could potentially just go for a really aggressive deck, just trying to use Gateway to get cards back in potentially your opponent's turn when you don't have to summon. And Xur could just be a big beat stick that you bring back with Gateway. So it is good to know about if you want to build that sort of deck. Next up, we've got Dark World Lightning. The normal spell that says target one set card on the field, destroy that target, then discard one card. This will trigger your Dark Worlds. This will also pop your opponent's back row or set monsters. That's very good. The unfortunate thing is, if you target a back row with this thing, if it's chained, or, you know, if the monster is flipped up somehow, like maybe with Desert Sunlight or as like Big Shield Gardener or something, then you won't actually get to discard because you won't be able to destroy that target because it'll be face up, no longer face down. And so you won't get the discard effect. So this can cause you to go pretty minus here. So it is a bit of a risk to playing it. For the traps here, Dark Deal is the big one. This says when your opponent activates a normal spell card, pay 1,000 life points. The activated effect of that normal spell becomes your opponent discards one random card. So this allows you to pitch your Dark Worlds and also get the additional effects here. And also negate a spell at the same time. So this is a very, very powerful effect if you can actually pull it off. Unfortunately, they're like, I mean, there are a variety of normal spells that are very strong in Reaper. You know, Dark Hole, Confiscation, Last Will. Those are just to name a few. So there are very powerful normal spells in this format. However, a lot of decks aren't really playing too many outside of that package. There are some, don't get me wrong, but like a lot of them are not going to be normal spells. Heavy Storm is another normal spell, I guess. So you can use that there as well. But most of the time, there will be a lot of things that will slip through the tracks for Dark Deal. So it does make it debatable, like, do you want to play this or not? Forces of Darkness is the last trap here, and it says target 2 Dark World monsters in your graveyard. Add those targets to your hand, so you get to refresh the Dark Worlds in your hand. Maybe set up another gold or civil play there, or set up a brow again. So that's not terrible. The one issue I have with this is it feels like sort of a roundabout way of getting a Dark World to field when we've got Gateway to do the same thing. So I'm not like the biggest fan of Forces of Dark World, but maybe we'll sort of figure out a strategy that will make Forces better than Gateway. But it's something to consider. Now, if you're thinking about other ways to potentially proc the effects of these Dark Worlds, it is good to look for cards that discard for effect and not for cost. And that is a bit rare at this time in the game's history. So Card Destruction, I mean, that's a clear one that does it. Morphing Jar, that's another one that does it. There are 2 limited cards that are very, very good in this deck, but there are some more obscure cards that also do this sort of thing. You've got Cheerful Coffin, which I wouldn't recommend because this card's just really bad. You know, it's just basically a hard minus. It does get the Dark Worlds engraved, but you've got better ways to do it while also getting some value. For instance, like Drag Down into the Grave. That's a good one here. This one lets you see your opponent's hand and they see your hand, and both of you like pitch a card from it. So if you like set your entire hand except for one card, which is a Dark World, you can force your opponent to discard it. You also get a draw and rip the best card out of their hand. So that's very good in that respect. And also, the last one I can think of off the top of my head is Mind Crush here. Mind Crush, you know, it says declare one card name. If that card is in your opponent's hand, you must discard all copies of it. Otherwise, you discard one random card. So this can be good to pair with something like Drag Down into the Grave because you get to know your opponent's hand, rip a card out of it with Mind Crush, or in a worst case scenario, you could purposely call a card wrong with Mind Crush and hope that your opponent discards the card in your hand that's the Dark World that summoned itself or gets you draws, etc. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. But again, just like before with the sort of Dark World cards that don't have Dark World name, we can look up discard here and just get a peek at what else might be here that can discard here. Final Destiny is something that we could do. Discard all five cards from your hand and destroy all cards on the field. Although that discard might be a cost, it just might not have problem solving card decks. Either way, that's way too hard to pull off, and it's not really worth doing. So I'm not going to, you know, go for that one. I think that's a bit cope there. I mean, looking at these others, I guess Jowgen also does, but it conflicts with the idea of special summoning out a Dark World monster. So that's not really that good. Yeah, I don't really think there are too many others here. We could do something like Dawn Zalug, for instance, and, you know, give it to our opponent, attack into it, and get a rip that way. So that's a potential option that we could consider. Same with White Magical Hat, which showed up earlier. Same with, like, well, Sphere Reaper can't really do it because it has to be direct attack there. Rope of Life is, no, that's a cost as well. So yeah, if it's discarded by cost, it won't actually count for the Dark World stuff. So yeah, unfortunately, there aren't too many more that I can see here that really do it. Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. I mean, we'll go through a little bit more. I guess Beckoning Light, that's one we could do potentially as well. The Dark Worlds don't really play light monsters, but we could potentially do a light package and pair with it. So maybe a Chaos package could go with that. That's something to consider. I think beyond that, there aren't really anything else that, you know, really appears here. because so much of this is just, you know, discarding for card effect and not, or not for card effect, but for cost, and not actually getting it for effect, which is what the Dark Rules want to be doing. So, yeah, and then we get to, yeah. So that's not going to do it here, unfortunately. So that's the limits of the discard outlets that we have for this. Now, again, as I mentioned, you could potentially play something like Creature Swap, or I believe Xian Spy will also do it. So, now that's just face up. So you can't do it with Morphing Jar, but you can do it with the Zalug. If you summon that Zalug, give them it with Xian Spy. Maybe crash a Scout in, and then you rip a card out of hand, get a search. That's not bad, but it's just really awkward here. So I don't necessarily know if the Xian Spy is worth it. That just might be a little bit cope there, not gonna lie. I think Creature Swap's probably the better play, and to pair it with Morphing Jar there if you do want to go that way. If you are going for just a more aggressive way of discarding your hand stuff, we could go for card safe return as well. Get these things, do special summon them back. We get draws off card safe return. We just keep getting value that way. So I think that now we've sort of gone through a lot of the things that sort of synergize with the Dark Worlds and their effects. So now we have to decide what type of game plan we want to be going for here. Now we could go with the aggro rush thing with Gateway to Dark World and just try and bring out a bunch of 2300 beat sticks, and that's our win con. However, again, that does lose to like Monarch, right? Monarchs are just 2400 beat sticks that can beat over these gold and silver stuff. Now, as a note, the gold and silver do have a bit of a benefit over those Monarchs because there's Deck Devastation Virus, which says tribute 1 Dark Monster for 2000 more attack. Look at your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, all cards they draw, until the end of their third turn after this card's activation. Destroy all those monsters with 1500 or less attack. So that's something. However, against Monarchs, I don't really think that's like the best thing in the world, honestly, because Treeborn Frog will just keep coming back with this. But it's still pretty good. It gets you hand knowledge for things like Mind Crush. So honestly, I think, you know, just seeing all the pros that the big Dark Worlds do have, I think we're leaning more towards hand control sort of strategy. You know, playing triple Mind Crush, playing Drag Down into the Grave to see things, Deck Devastation Virus to see things as well, maybe Trap Dust Shoot too, and, you know, just trying to control what our opponent draws, what they have in hand, and also getting big beat sticks as well to control the field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, the cards that we're obviously not including in that style deck, like Cheerful Coffin. That is just a hard minus. I don't think we're going to do the Don Zalug play or the Xian Spy play. Creature Swap could still be a controlling play to do. I don't think Beckoning Light makes the cut because we're not playing lights. I feel like we don't need Zure for this sort of deck. Although, if we do want to lean in on the card with safe returns, we can add that back. I feel like Brawn also isn't necessarily what we want to be doing here. Maybe Brawn is, because if we're controlling our opponent's board, then we're more likely to be able to get in with Brawn. So that's something. Do we need Beige, though, or Scar? That's a good question. Do we need Forces, too? Let's just sort this, see what sort of lineups of cards we have. Let's max out on the cards that we know we're going to include for this strategy. So we know we're going to do triple Mind Crush because that's like part of the game plan. We know that we're going to do triple Drag Down. Just getting the hand knowledge like this is very, very good. So we're going to do those. I think we want triple Dust Shoot as well, although maybe not triple Dust Shoot because we are going to be pitching a bunch of cards from their hand. So that's something to be wary of. But if we're playing Morphing Jar, maybe we could do stuff with that. Shallow Grave could also recycle the Morphing Jar as well, which is kind of nice. But I feel like that's kind of awkward, because that's like a big combo to set up, and they get back a monster as well. So I'm not really sure if that's worth it there. But I think this is a decent start to the deck. So we should probably play more golds and silvas. If we're maxing out this way, I think we want to just max out on the golds and the silvas, honestly. Because this way we always have a card in hand to pitch off the drag downs and just, put pressure on our opponent. So that's what I kind of want to do there. I feel like Scar is like not what we want to be doing. I'm going to put it in the side deck for now. But I feel like, Scar just sort of gets in the way. It only starts at a level 4 lower, so that's kind of bad. Brow we probably want to have a bunch of just to keep getting those draws in. So we'll put in some more brows like that. Let's see here. Do we want Beige as well? We could have Beige. Beige isn't terrible just to have because, again, if we need fodder for like our drag downs or things, that could be decent. I'm trying to think about like what our normal summons will be. I think most likely here, Brawn would be the normal summon. Oh, also something that we should do before going too much further is we should just, take a peek at the powerful cards that we should be including here, no matter what. So what we can do here is we can click limit 1 just to see the limited cards at this time in this format. Dark Hole is something we definitely want to be including. Heavy Storm might conflict with our deck a little bit, but it's something we at least want to have on the side. And the reason why it might conflict is because if we're setting cards to pair with Drag Down, Heavy is really bad. It also conflicts with, like, card save return, I guess, there. So Heavy is probably a side deck card more than anything. We want Sangan, probably. Maybe not Sangan can search out Morphing Jar, which is very good. So I'm not sure beyond that. Cyber Jar is also one that's, like, kind of iffy in this deck. I'm not really sure if Cyber Jar is necessary. Comfy is definitely necessary. MSD is probably good to keep. Snatch Steal is probably good. Call, probably also good, just to bring back our guys. Jinzo, maybe as well. Because, I mean, it's not terrible to get Jinzo in Grave. I don't know. I'm going to put Jinzo inside. Premat is also... We might not really need Premat if we've got our dark guys coming back over and over again, but it could be good to just get more pressure there. TT, probably necessary. I like TT a lot. Scapegoat, we probably don't need. Exiled, iffy. I'm going to put it in the side. Same with Lily. Book, I don't know about Book. I'm going to put that in the side as well. We got a lot of things inside. Oh, Ceasefire probably goes in the side for flip focus strategies. We've got Breaker. Breaker probably goes main. What are the levels on these things? 5? We could go for Dark Balter with that, so I don't hate putting in a meta here, getting some access to some good 5 targets. I don't hate that. The thing about Dark Balter is it's awkward into, like, Sidra, but it is also a Dark Monster with 2,000 more attack for the deck devastation buyers. If we're going for meta, we could also go Scapegoat. That might be worth doing. Is Exchange of the Spirit worth? I don't think Exchange of the Spirit's worth it, personally. We could do Night Assailant to add back the Morphing Jar. That's not terrible. Add back a Flip Monster. And if we are doing that, we could also do Moth, potentially. Warriorly is really good. I kind of like that. Do we want Demok? Demok is okay, Demok's actually kind of cool. And reason for this is that if we're summoning back our Dark Worlds, right, and we just get Demok, we get Tribute Fodder for Demok, right? We can bring that out pretty easily. If we're playing Demok in the deck, I think we also want the Premat and the Call definitely in the deck. Those are really good. Protector conflicts with our deck, so we can't really do any Protector loops with that. Sook is also kind of conflicting with our deck because we don't want it to go back to hand. Warriorly might be an inclusion here as well. It's our 1 light, so we don't really want to play Chaos stuff right now. Reckless might also be a consideration since we're getting some draws in through other means. But probably not for this deck, I'd assume. But yeah, I think this is well, if we're playing Night Assailant, we could also play Moth. Okay, so let's look at the cards that we've got here. What do we want to cut from this? I think we could probably... Do we need Creature Swap? Do we need to trigger the Sylvas with their own effect? So we play... Well, okay. If we're playing Creature Swap and meta, we could put in a Scapegoat here, for instance. And then that could, pair with the meta, give them a token as well. So it pairs with that too. So that's pretty good. I don't think we need Forces of Dark World or Darkness, honestly. That's going to be... Yeah, I think, like, what does this do for us, really? Not much. So I'm going to get rid of Forces of Darkness here. Do we need Gateway to Dark World? So, okay, here's part of the thing. Are we going for the card save return strategy? Like, we probably have to decide, like, around now. Are we going for those draws off card save return? I think that it's probably a bit more win more. Like, in a controlling deck like this, I feel like we don't want to have card save return, which could just be a dead draw early, although it can help us recover later in the game. So I don't know about that. Do we want Beige? I feel like we don't need Beige. So I think I'm going to cut Beige. Do we need Brawn? Maybe not. Again, Brawn is kind of nice because, like, what are we doing with our normal summon? But I think with our normal summon, we're probably just trying to commit good monsters to board. So, yeah, this might be a bit awkward. It might be a bit monster light. But I do think that this is overall okay. It's just kind of iffy in some places. I don't think we need Dark Deal. I can put it in the side, I guess. But, like, I don't think we need it right now. Yeah, this is a very weird deck to build. I don't necessarily know if this is all correct. I don't think we need Gateway to Dark World there. And yeah, I'm gonna cut the card save return. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think we necessarily need... Well, no, Creature Swap does pair with our tokens as well. So I'm okay with Creature Swap here. Whoops, not 0. Yeah. There we go. I'm okay with creature swap. I think it's fine. It's just very... This is a very awkward deck. Like, the thing about Dark Pearl is that it doesn't really know what it wants to do. I think what we want to do is just lean into this controlling aspect as much as possible. But it can be a bit rough in certain situations. Okay, I think of the cards we've got... Do we need more Dark World Lightnings? What are our discard outlets? So we've got Drag Down, we've got Card Destruction. We could go for more Dark World Lightning. Just as flexible removal. However, as I mentioned, it's not always removal. So it's a bit awkward. But I'm okay with going for more Dark World Lightning. I think it's okay. So I'm gonna put 2 of this in. Do we... So, like, I'm thinking about, like, do we need more Battle Traps here? Battle Traps could be good. Because, you know, we are a bit monster light. You know, if we think about the monster, we can easily commit to board without a combo. They are kind of few and far between. But I do think that overall we don't necessarily need that removal because we're playing Triple Dust Shoot, we're playing this Mind Crush here as well, playing TT, we're playing Deck Devi. So, like, we've got a lot of ways to stop their things from ever hitting the board. And so I think that's what I'm more fine with. So I'm not going to play defensive traps in the main deck. I don't think we need to, but we can definitely play them in the side. I'm okay with the look of this so far. I think it's fine. We could also do a Sidra maybe, but, like, Sidra's awkward. Maybe we do a Sidra. I don't know. Maybe some Monarchs as well. But no, I think if we clutter up our hand too much with things we can't necessarily summon, then Drag Down gets a lot worse. So I think this is fine, personally. It's a bit iffy in some places, but I do think it's okay overall. Yeah, I think this is... I like the look of this. Now, of course, whenever building a deck, you know, the important thing is after you've got an initial draft, you test out some games with it and dive into some stuff. So that would be the next step here. But before we dive into that, let's go through the side deck here, because I was just putting cards here just as, like, sort of like, okay, interesting to think about. But I think, you know, now that we're diving into the side deck and actually making something here to side deck against the cards in the format, then I think we can cut some stuff. So I already cut the Scar because I feel like Scar, like, never comes up in this deck in particular. The thing you're searching is, like, Brow, and that's not really the best. If we wanted to play a Brawn package in the side, we could, but I don't think it really gets us anything. Like, there's not a deck in the format that I can think of that I'd want to bring that in for. Sidra, I don't think really does anything in this, you know, like, for specific matchups. I can't think of a matchup where that does something. We could play Exile plus a Rhoda package. Like, what are we rotoing into? I guess if we want to go, like, Mystic Swordsman level 2 as well, so we could do a bit of a small warrior package here. So bring in that, bring in double Rhoda to sort of search that out. But that does feel a bit awkward for me, having only 3 Rhoda targets here. So I don't really think it's that good. I don't think Sangan is, like... What does Sangan do in the side? What match do you bring it in against? I don't really think there is one. It's a good monster, honestly, just to have, though. So maybe that's something that we might include in the main deck. But, like, again, like, what does it do for us here? Yeah, I don't think it's that necessary. I'm going back and forth on the Sangan in main or not now. This is also something that you can consider in the side decking process, where, like, sometimes things will jump back and forth between one or the other that you're going for. What do I not need here? What is Magician of Faith getting back that's very good? I mean, I guess there's a lot of things. Like, Card Destruction is very powerful in this deck. Drag Down can be good in this deck as well. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. Does Book do anything against a lot of decks in this format? I guess against... I don't think we need... Well, okay, so Dark Deal is good against, like, Monarch decks in particular. But the thing is that they can activate Last Will after they commit a Mobius. So I don't really care about Dark Deal as much here. What I care more about against those decks... Now, also, I don't need Reckless. I feel like Reckless is cope. What I care more about for those decks is something like Threatening Roar, for instance, right? I feel like Threatening Roar is much more valuable than Dark Deal there, even though we're not getting, like, field presence. I feel like you need this for the OTK strats. I feel like Dust Tornadoes could be good for back row. So that's something. Dust Tornado. If we're playing the I'm gonna cut the Rhoda package. I don't think it's that good here. I just don't think we've got enough warrior targets to make that worth. But I do think that Nobleman of Crossout is good for more flip focus decks. I don't think we need Lily. I think Lily's kind of bad. I kind of like Jinzo here just because it does shut off our opponent's traps. It does conflict with our Mind Crushes and Dust Shoots, but Dust Shoot is really bad against decks that are like just playing a bunch of traps, like, you know, more burn focused decks. I feel like Dust Shoot is not really that good against. So we can bring in the Jinzo. It does conflict with Mind Crush in those cases, but we're bringing in like Jinzo, probably Heavy and other stuff. So I don't really care as much about that. Decree could also be good to bring in for bringing in the Jinzo. So yeah, I'll go for Decree as well. I'm not sure if how many of these we want. I don't think we need Book. I think Book isn't really necessary here. I think Kaiku is really good for like banish focus decks. So I'm going to bring in some Kaikus as well. The ratios here are definitely a bit awkward with the side deck. And also, I mean, the main deck still has 41 cards in it, and I need to cut one. So let's think about what we want to cut here. Maybe triple Decree is a bit rough because if we draw like tons of Decrees, we do brick a bit there. So maybe we don't need the third Decree. And if we're thinking about like what to cut from the main, maybe we don't need 6 of the big Dark World guys. I personally am fine with 6 of them because like we want to have fodder in hand for Drag Down or Mind Crush or whatever we have at any point in the time in the game. But it might not be as necessary. Night Assailant also might be just like not really that worth it, but I do like Night Assailant. It's very neat just to get back a flip monster. But like, what's it really doing here? I don't think it's doing that much. I could cut Night Assailant. I could also cut like Faith if I'm cutting the Night Assailant, honestly. Because Faith was mainly in there for Night Assailant. And so it's like not altogether that great. Yeah, it's just like not the... Well, I don't know. There are some neat targets you can get with Night Assailant. Like getting back Morphing Dart is so good. Especially if you draw into like Swap or something. Ugh. Oh, it was so tough. I mean, this is what I get for doing like an unscripted video trying to deck build and having to make hard choices on the spot. It's a bit tricky. I feel like if you resolve Morphing Dart, you don't need to resolve it multiple times. Especially if you resolved it with a creature swap active. So I feel like Night Assailant is not the best. And also like your opponent knows what you search with the Night Assailant, so they can like play around that in some ways, right? So Morphing Dart becomes a bit less good. You could argue that for Sangan as well. But I don't really think it's needed there. So what I might do is maybe Knock. Maybe Knock is good. Maybe Ceasefire is kind of bad. I'm just trying to think about what to replace the thing with here. I'm just gonna cut Night Assailant entirely, put in the third Decree. Mask of Restrict is also really a good card against like Monarchs. That could be something to bring in. And we don't really care about tributing here because our monsters don't really tribute. The only thing we care about tributing is like Demock, but we can just side that out if we're siding in Restrict. So maybe instead of third Decree, I go for like Mask of Restrict to deal with Monarch decks. That's one Mask of Restrict. Can we fit in a second? I feel we don't necessarily need 3, but we might want 3. Tricky stuff here. Tricky stuff for sure. Let's see here. Well, while I'm thinking about this, let's just fill out the extra deck because, you know, we might as well do that. Now, I've shown off the typical sort of extra deck in this forum multiple times. You might wonder, like, how do I make that? How do I know what to do there? What I just do is I search Monster Fusion, you know, on DB here with sorting by release date, and then sort of go through, see what is around that could be useful. Because if we're playing Metamorphosis, it's good to have, like, Darkfire Dragon and Dragon to the Wicked Knight, which are the level 4 and level 3 targets that you generally go to. Now, if you're playing a Chaos deck, then you could play Flame Ghost instead of the Dragoness here. But again, we've got an unlimited Fusion deck in this format, so you can proxy in whatever you need. But either way, these are good cards to know about there. You probably want to have Thousand Night Restrict, very important. Last Warrior for Another Planet can come up. Dark Vault of the Terrible can come up. Fiend's Called Dragon, Ryu Senshi, Reaper on the Nightmare. Let's see here. You generally want to focus on cards you can actually summon out, like, you know, not ones that have to be special summoned in some specific way, like, you know, the XYZ Dragons and stuff like that. Gatling Dragon's pretty good. King's Dragoon's pretty good. Darkblade the Dragon Knight's pretty good as well. Of course, we got to have Cyber End Dragon and Cyber Twin Dragon. I mean, very iconic parts of this format. Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is generally good to go for as well. And Cyber Blader can potentially come up. Now, there are some things we could have put in here instead. But, like, it doesn't really matter too much here, all things considered. Maybe because we're playing meta with a level 5 target, maybe we want to put in... If there's a level 5 monster here with, like, more than 2,000 attack, I don't think there is. I think the 2100s are all level 6. Yeah, I don't think there is a a level 5 with a higher attack than 2100. So I'm just going to leave it as is here. Yep, that's level 6. So yeah, those are all level 6. So I think this is like the best fusion deck we can sort of set up for this deck. Again, you know, it's good to know about the other cards in the format, so that way if you do need to do a different setup here, you can bring out a fusion monster that you sort of proxy in. But as is, I think that this fusion deck is perfectly fine for this deck itself. Now that we've filled out the fusion deck, let's dive back into the side and main. Like, what do I want to do here? Instead of Faith, I could also put in Reaper, because Reaper is a way to stall off. It's a way to rip cards out of our opponent's hand, which can allow us to get more aggressive. It does conflict with Dust Shoot, though, so I don't necessarily want that there. Reaper is a very good card in this format in general. I don't think we need Reaper, but yeah, I'm okay leaving it like this, honestly, for now. Yeah, I think that this is ultimately fine. Maybe I should cut the Jinzo for another Restrict. That's something I could do as well. Yeah, I don't hate cutting Jinzo for another Restrict. Yeah, I think that honestly is fine. Maybe Ceasefire. Maybe I cut Ceasefire because... No, I feel like for flip focus strategies, it is good to have the Ceasefire there. So yeah, I'm gonna cut the Jinzo for another Mask of Restrict. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. And again, like, the important thing to do here is always testing after this. So this is like my final version right now. I'm going to get some games with it and then make a video out of that as well. But again, you know, in testing, I might notice certain things and be like, oh, I really shouldn't have this Magician of Faith in the main. I should switch that up for something else. Or, oh, I really need a Jinzo in the side deck. I was really missing that. I should put that in, right? So I think that it really does depend on testing and stuff, and this is just a very preliminary draft here, but I hope that this sort of gave some insight into how I build decks, and hopefully inspired you to build your own interesting decks in these formats, or sort of gave you a how-to on how to sort of go about that. Now, everyone's got their own different deck building philosophies, but this is just sort of a peek into my process here, and I'm not the best deck builder in the world. I don't claim to be. I'm just someone who's spent a lot of time deck building for a lot of these formats, and so, you know, I do have some experience doing that. But let me know what you think about this deck down in the comments below. Anything that you would change, or potentially anything that you didn't think about, or that I didn't think about, that you either liked in the deck or want me to include in the deck in the future. I'll be having a video featuring this deck in action on the channel coming in the following days, so definitely look forward to that. And the best way to be notified when that video comes out is to subscribe to the channel, and it really helps out the channel a lot. We're trying to reach 1,500 subscribers by the end of the month, and with your help, we can make it there. We're only about 50 off, so I'm sure we can do it. If everyone watching who's not subscribed, do subscribe. And also helps grow the community more, and, you know, allow for more people to duel against in the Discord, and also, you know, for the tournaments and things like that. And speaking of, if you do want to get games in this format or any other format that I featured on the channel, head on over to the YGF from Zero Discord, linked in the description down below. If you want to support me directly, I also have a Patreon linked in the description as well. And if you join the Patreon, get shouted out in these videos. So big shout outs to Tyler Compton, GMYFS, Bren Donker, Rinsewin, Porkchop, and Dumptruck. It really means a lot that you all support me this way and encourages me to make more videos like this one. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGF from Zero. I'm signing off.